Interesting, Mr. Shapiro, you talked about white privilege. And just this week, I had a conversation with Rachel Lazar, who's done some work, a Jewish American woman who's done some work on this area, as well as having extensive conversations with Dr. Greg Parks of Wake Forest University, who's also talked quite a bit about critical race theory. And it's my understanding that white privilege is not telling individuals that they cannot speak, but it is a term for societal privilege that individuals have as a benefit of their white skin. And I don't think that, and I think universities would be remiss to then say that because you're white, you're not allowed to say anything that's critical of white people. I didn't know that white privilege actually went into that sphere. My understanding is it's just, and the issue is that white privilege makes people uncomfortable to talk about the societal privilege that they have.
Well, to me, what I say on campuses all the time is if you want to cite instances of racism that we can all find and fight together, that's something that I'm more than willing to stand next to you and fight, because that's obviously stuff that we should fight together. But when you just...
Y'all heard that, right? The man said that he'll be out there, you know what I mean, with his fist in the air, fight the power, you know, civil rights, let's get it, you know what I mean, on his knee, like Kaepernick. Does he like Kaepernick? I would probably guess that he don't like Kaepernick. Nah, he don't like Kaepernick. Well, he might. He just now said that if it's a worthy cause, you know what I mean, and if it's about certain things that I'll be out there fighting shoulder to shoulder with you, so he might like Kaepernick. I don't know. Okay. Instances
of racism that we can all find and fight together, that's something that I'm more than willing to stand next to you and fight, because that's obviously stuff that we should fight together. But when you just say that there is a white privilege out there in the ether and that by dint of birth your skin color generates for you an advantage, what you're really saying to people is that your view is less valuable because you have not experienced what I've experienced. And that is an identity argument, that's a character argument, that's not a rational political argument that can actually be taken on in any way. It's more of a cudgel and a club than it is an attempt to open a discussion.
Well, I think it's a demonstrable evidence that through society's demographics that being white has societal privileges that being black does not. But
we can talk about how that manifests, because that's
I'm also interested in what you just said now, is that you would stand next to anyone who has this. So, Mr. Shapiro, my question to you is, for Ms. Dunston, the tying the noose around the campus and writing messages that target African-American young students, would you consider that hate speech, and then would you stand next to her and fight for her?
As I say, I would. This is the first I'm hearing about it, honestly, but
really,
yeah. But from
hey, I don't know, Ben Shapiro. I don't know if this is your first time hearing about it, bro. Hey, if y'all like this type of reaction or content, please do me a favor and hit the subscribe button and also the notification bell so that next time we put out content, you'd be the first to be notified. Okay, let's get into it. Y'all heard me just now trolling Ben Shapiro, right? I don't know if he's been there. I don't know if I don't doubt that he didn't hear about it, or if he did. And honestly, I can care less. I just want to hear his retort and see if it makes some daggone sense and if I can resonate with it. That's it. I'm just trying to learn something. So I don't have a horse in the race. I don't have a dog in the fight, all right?
From hearing about it, maybe because it's local. I mean, I'm from LA. But in any case, I'm more than happy to stand alongside her and fight whatever group was responsible for this. Not only more than happy, I mean, you're talking about the alt-right. Again, I was the #1 target of anti-Semitic harassment from the alt-right last year. So I'm more than happy to do all that. And
somebody said that. Somebody said that this dude experienced extreme prejudice when it came to his religious beliefs and his birthright. So maybe that's what he just now was talking about just now. And he said a lot of the people who did that were from the alt-right. So, yeah, all right.
One target of anti-Semitic harassment from the alt-right last year. So I'm more than happy to do all that. And I think there's one more distinction that has to be made. When we talk about cases like Taylor's, they're horrific, and the administration is siding with Taylor. Okay, the administration is doing the right thing by Taylor, or trying to do the right thing by Taylor, as they should be. And I think that we need to make a distinction between cases where the administration is actively participating in the suppression of speech and cases in which the administration is trying to do the right thing in order to punish people for application of crime.
The gentleman, Mr. Shapiro.
It's an honor to testify. It's an honor to testify before you here today. The reason that I'm with you is that I speak on dozens of college campuses every year, so I have some firsthand experience with the anti-First Amendment activities that have been taking place on the college campuses. I've encountered anti-free speech measures, administrative cowardice, even physical violence at campuses ranging from California State University at Los Angeles to University of Wisconsin at Madison, which is driving the legislation that Ms. Demings was talking about.
Who is Ben Shapiro? What does he do? I'm so serious. When I ask that question, I'm not trying to be funny. What does he do? Like, who is he? Is he just a debater, a master debater? Okay, that wasn't fun. Does he teach at schools? Is he a doctor or something of some sort? I know that he was a lawyer, but did he run for office? Did he fight certain laws or something like that? I want to know, was he running for Senate or something? I want to know why he is in the forefront of a lot of these conversations and why so many people turn to him for leadership on certain issues, or they want to hear his view on certain issues. Like, who is he that got us so intrigued by him and what he believed? If y'all can answer that for me, that'd be dope.
To University of Wisconsin at Madison, which is driving the legislation that Ms. Demings was talking about, to Penn State University, to UC Berkeley, and I am not alone. In order to understand what's been going on at some of our college campuses, it's necessary to explore the ideology that provides the impetus for a lot of the protesters who violently obstruct events, pull fire alarms, assault professors and even other students, and the impetus for administrators who all too often humor these protesters. Free speech is under assault because of a three-step argument made by the advocates and justifiers of violence. The first step is they say that the validity or invalidity of an argument can be judged solely by the ethnic, sexual, racial, or cultural identity of the person making the argument. The second step is that they claim those who say otherwise are engaging in what they call verbal violence. And the final step is they conclude that physical violence is sometimes justified in order to stop such verbal violence. So let's examine each of these three steps in turn. First, the philosophy of intersectionality. This philosophy now dominates college campuses as well as a large segment, unfortunately, of today's Democratic Party, and suggests that straight white Americans are inherently the beneficiaries of white privilege and therefore cannot speak on certain policies, since they have not experienced what it's like to be black or Hispanic or gay or transgender or a woman. This philosophy ranks the value of a view not based on the logic or merit of the view, but on the level of victimization in American society experienced by the person espousing the view. Therefore, if you're an LGBT black woman, your view of American society is automatically more valuable than that of a straight white male. The next step in the logic is obvious. If a straight white male or anybody else...
He said your view is more valuable. If you're a gay black woman, then your view is far more logical than a straight white male, because people don't really want to listen to you straight white men because they feel like you've had more privilege than anyone. So you just need to shut the hell up. Okay. All right. Okay. I mean, that's I wouldn't say that's a fallacy, but I thought he liked to spout facts. Like, that's not something that's proven though, right? I don't think it is, but I can understand why he would say that, but it's not a fact.
Straight white male. The next step in the logic is obvious. If a straight white male or anybody else who ranks lower on the victimhood scale says something contrary to the viewpoint of the higher ranking intersectionality identity, that person has engaged in a microaggression. As NYU social psychologist Jonathan Haidt writes, microaggressions are small actions or word choices that seem on their face to have no malicious intent, but that are thought of as a kind of violence nonetheless. You don't have to actively say anything insulting to microaggress. Somebody merely needs to take offense. If, for example, you say that society ought to be colorblind, you're microaggressing certain identity groups who have been victimized by a non-colorblind society. Note, microaggressions, as the name suggests, are not merely insults. They are aggressions. They are the equivalent to physical violence. Just 2 weeks ago, psychologist Lisa Feldman Barrett of Northeastern University published an essay in the New York Times suggesting that words should be seen as physical violence because they can cause stress, and stress causes physical harm. Thus, Feldman suggested it is reasonable, scientifically speaking, to ban or restrict speech you do not like at your school. This is both inane and dangerous. That's because it leads to the final logical step. Words you don't like deserve to be fought physically. When I spoke at California State University at LA, one professor threatened students who sponsored me by offering to fight them. He then posted a slogan on the door of his office stating, "The best response to microaggression is macroaggression." As Haidt writes, this is why the idea that speech is violence is so dangerous. It tells the members of a generation already beset by anxiety and depression that the world is a far more violent and threatening place than it really is.
This dude is a writer. I tell you that daggone much. Sheesh. This dude is a writer. You can tell that he wrote a lot of things before. Like, you can tell he's a freaking lawyer. He's so astute. He's extremely astute.
Beset by anxiety and depression that the world is a far more violent and threatening place than it really is. It tells them that words, ideas, speakers can literally kill them. Even worse, at a time of rapidly rising political polarization in the United States, it helps a small subset of that generation justify political violence. Indeed, protesters all too often engage in physically violent disruption when they believe their identity group is under verbal attack by someone, usually conservative, but not always. Not only do some administrators look the other way, at Middlebury College, Cal State LA, Berkeley, Evergreen, actual crimes were committed and almost nobody has been arrested. But they actively forbid events from moving forward, creating a heckler's veto. The notion that if you are physically violent enough, you can get administrators to kowtow to you, to bow before you, by canceling an event you disagree with altogether. All of this destroys free speech. But just as importantly, it turns students into snowflakes, craven and pathetic, looking for an excuse to be offended so they can earn points in the intersectionality Olympics and then use those points as a club with which to beat opponents.
See, my brother has an opinion. Definitely have an opinion. All right.
So they can earn points in the intersectionality Olympics and then use those points as a club with which to beat opponents. A healthy nation requires an emotionally and intellectually vigorous population ready to engage in open debate at all times. Shielding college students from opposing viewpoints makes them simultaneously weaker and more dangerous. We must fight that process at every step. And that begins by acknowledging that whatever we think about America and where we stand, we must agree on this fundamental principle. All of our views should be judged on their merits, not on the color or sex or sexual orientation of the speaker, and those views should never be banned on the grounds that they offend someone. Thanks so much.
Wow. That was presented very well, sir. That was actually presented very damn well. Now, I really want to hear what they got to say about this, because he seemed to have covered all his bases. He did drop some opinions in there, but it was like facts sprinkled with opinions versus a whole bunch of opinions sprinkled with facts. So I do want to hear what they come back with from that.
Mr. Shapiro, you an agitator?
Not as far as
Are you an agitator?
Not as far as I'm aware. So I think that some of what's been said does miniskirt the debate. Mr. Krishnamurthy, I got it right. When you were talking about the Wisconsin law, I believe that law was brought up in direct counter to what happened, and it was people talked about it on the floor of the legislature. In direct counter to what happened when I spoke at University of Wisconsin at Madison, where you had a bunch of protesters who stood in front of the stage and obstructed the stage, and then refused to leave. And when I asked the police would they remove the protesters at a certain, they've been going for 15 minutes. By the way. Personally, two things, just to preface. I have no problem whatsoever with people protesting my speeches. I do have a problem with people who won't actually let me speak. And number two, as far as all the talk about white supremacy, I can speak from experience. Mr. Lawrence, your organization named me the #1 target of anti-Semitism online last year. So I have a trophy at my house that says #1 hated Jew in America. So I'm totally familiar with the level of vitriol that's become common in our politics.
Wow, #1 hated Jew in America. Sheesh. My brother has had a chip on his shoulder for a long, long time. A long time, man. I mean, I remember some of the very first videos I've checked out from him, he did say that he was bullied a lot in school. He was bullied a lot in school. And I believe that that's why he he is like so astute with law and everything that he is right now. And he's just like, look, everything got to be about like some written, detailed, researched facts, and everything else. Yeah, you can be emotional and compassionate if you want, but that's not my job. That's not my understanding. I don't care to be a part of that. So yeah, and I do believe he has a child. I would love to see how his child has to deal with that part about, look, facts don't care about your feelings, Lord. Hey, you better get your ass up. Facts don't care about your feelings. Facts.
Totally familiar with the level of vitriol that's become common in our politics. But one of the things that's a problem, and I think we have to be careful about, is when we say leave it to the administrators, and then the administrators do what they did at UW, which is the police. I said to the police, will you remove these protesters? And the police said, we have been told by the administration that if we remove the protesters, we are to shut down the event entirely. So we can't remove the protesters. We literally had to wait until they just got tired and walked out, basically. When that's the response of the administration, shouldn't there be some sort of repercussion for that? Because what I'm seeing is a heckler's veto that's taking place on campus. What I'm seeing is people who are not engaging in free speech designed to enrich the debate, but in order to shut down the debate. And there have to be some sort of ramifications for people who are actually committing trespass. I mean, this is not a question of free, everyone is trying to focus in on this term hate crime and hate speech.
Now, hear what he's about to say about the hate crime and the hate speech. He's about to drop the mic on this one right here. This is the part.
And on this term hate crime and hate speech, the important part of those phrases is not the first word. It's speech versus crime. So if there's a crime that's being committed, we're all in agreement. If somebody commits a crime and they're speaking of an imminent threat to somebody, of course that's a crime. But that has very little to do with the hate and a lot more to do with the crime as to whether that's prosecuted, because hate speech is not prosecutable, nor should it be policed by the campus. So the fact is that what we are seeing is a conflation between speech and active attempts to obstruct in order to promote the obstruction by some administrators on a few college campuses.
Can you speak to how time, manner, and place restrictions are being abused?
So most obviously, UC Berkeley did that with Ann Coulter, where they kept moving around her room and they kept saying they didn't have rooms available. They said the same thing to me a week ago. There was some public outcry, and now they're offering some rooms, which I hope that event goes forward. It's not rare. They do this a lot. A private university that did it was DePaul University. I was threatened with arrest if I set foot on campus. I actually showed up there, and a security guard told me, I asked him, if I move 6 inches forward, are you going to arrest me? And he said yes, and he had the sheriff of Cook County behind him. So this is, it's become a cover for ideological discrimination, because if Ta-Nehisi Coates wants to speak on these campuses, there's not going to be any problem. The administrators will make certain that time, place, and manner restrictions don't get in the way. And this is why I say, saying that the discretion of administrators is wonderful is all well and good, except that they very often are attempting to achieve a particular political end by using means that are normally legitimate. And that's definitely a dangerous thing. If you don't mind, I have a quick note on something that I think it was Mr. Lawrence was saying earlier about the damage that's done to students by various things that happen on campus, by threats of violence and this sort of thing. And obviously, everyone I think agrees that what happened to Taylor is unacceptable. But one of the things that I think should also be pointed out is we have a lot of other students in the crowd and administrators who spend an enormous amount of time pushing stuff like white privilege means that you must accept that you are subordinate in terms of your view because of identity. This also has some lasting damage with regard to First Amendment exercise and with regard to how people perceive the freedom of the country.
What was this about? What was the protest about? Shapiro leaves damn woman speechless. I would like to know what the protest was about, because he said it was about Taylor. And I want to know what happened with that, because context is everything for me. I know a lot of the people there already know what happened. Some of you already know what happened. I don't. In order for me to make a full decision on how I feel about his argument and everything, I definitely need to get some context. So I plan on going to check that out here shortly.
Damage with regard to First Amendment exercise and with regard to how people perceive the freedom of the country. And I understand that this is universally held belief among university educators that we have to accept the guilt of particular races or particular sexual orientations for discrimination that's happened in the past. But when you teach a bunch of 18 and 19-year-old people this, you shouldn't be surprised when, number one, they go into hiding with their viewpoint, or number two, they become frustrated. It's an absurdity to suggest that you can tell people that their viewpoints are out of line because of their identity. At the same time, you're telling other people that their viewpoints are completely in line because of their identity, and that any assault on their senses must be protected or prevented at any cost.
Yeah, but you do know that everybody got their turn. Everybody get their turn. And now it seems like it's the white man's turn. Meaning, and don't jump out of your daggone boots by me saying that. I'm just saying that when everybody else is getting backing and getting support, and everything's a law to do this, that, and the third against or to any of these other groups and whatnot. Now, like, they don't want to be called anything. We don't want to be said. I mean, have words said to us, or now we want to stand for everything and every group. There's probably 1 million groups since the country has started that now want their own private rights. So with those rights, people who once, I guess, used to make laws against those people, now they got to bow down and they can't say anything, and they're the last to speak, and they're the last to do, and they're the last to this. And it's happening. The bigger the world becomes as time progresses, it's happening. Sorry, it is. A lot of different people are moving here from different countries, and they're going to get their special rights too, and they've already started. Y'all going to be fighting. Some people are going to be fighting for, but every single time someone's fighting for those rights, people are going to be fighting against them.
Identity. At the same time, you're telling other people that their viewpoints are completely in line because of their identity, and that any assault on their senses must be protected or prevented at any cost.
Well, I would just like to point out in closing that the group, Young Americans for Liberty, that is handing out constitutions on campuses all across the country, has changed free speech restrictions on 25 campuses just by handing out this document, not by setting fires because they didn't like the speaker or throwing rocks through windows, but by handing out this Constitution. And I am inspired that there are young people who are inspired by this document, and it should never be illegal to hand out this document.
Well said, Mr. Massey. Real quick, Ms. Strawson, is Mr. Shapiro right? Are most of the anti-speech activities going on campuses targeted towards conservatives and libertarians?
Certainly the well-publicized ones have been, and I can't speak for campuses across the country, but I go back to an opening point that I made, which was best summarized in the title of a book by Nat Hentoff.
But I just wanted to answer. I can't. We'll come back to that. But I just wanted to respond to Mr. Shapiro's point. I mean, that's my understanding as well. And
those are the well-publicized incidents, and it would be consistent with what surveys show about the prevailing beliefs on campus.
Yeah, they didn't want you to speak in this one. They was like, okay, we done. We got what we needed. Per usual, man, I want to hear what y'all guys say about this in the comments below. If you have yet to hit that subscribe button, please make sure you do so on your way out the door. Once again, guys, I am Van, and now we are all the LFR family, and I look forward to seeing you on the next video and hopefully inside the Patreon as well. You have been amazing. Love y'all.